Row for Show Productions presents Humble Beginnings, the Undrafted Podcast. Welcome to Humble Beginnings, the Undrafted Podcast. I'm your host, Rochelle Hamilton Jr., and this is episode 56 of the Undrafted Podcast. Man, this is a blessing to be here on this platform on today. Man, we're going to do this podcast today, and then after that, it's going to be a few weeks of a break. Basketball is over with the NBA Finals game concluding last night. Football is basically in a dead period right now. There's not going to be anything going on until training camp. So we're going to take a little bit of a break. I've got to focus my attention on some other things going on, some other projects that I'm working on anyway. So we're going to take a break from the podcast for about 5 or 6 weeks, and then we'll be back when training camp starts. But we got a great one for you today. In the Low with Row, overnight, late last night, Thursday night, got some unfortunate news. Broncos owner Pat Bowlen unfortunately passed away at the age of 75 after a years-long battle with the debilitating disease, Alzheimer's. So our thoughts and prayers go out to his wife and his kids, his family. A very unfortunate event. Pat Bowlen was a really good guy, so I'll talk about that in the Low with Row, and then in I'm In and I'm Out, I'll talk about NBA Finals Game 6. That was an amazing game. Man, that game was a heart racer, man. I mean, it had me on the edge of the couch basically all night. Yeah. I mean, Golden State, even with all the injuries and things that they had, I mean, they showed the hearts of champions because they would not go away. So I'll talk about that. I'll get into that game more in I'm In and I'm Out. Then in What's the Way with Chef Rodaddy, I had somebody ask me a question about the lessons that I've learned along this weight loss journey. And I learned a lot of lessons along this journey. So I'll get into detail about that and let you know some things that I learned and some things that I improved on as a result. And this is some bull jive. The NFL wants to reportedly expand to an 18-game schedule, or at least Roger Goodell is trying to tout the idea of an 18-game regular season schedule, and I'm just not on board with that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it with the Low with Row. Late last night, Denver Broncos owner Pat Bowlen, the most successful owner in Denver sports history, and in my opinion, the best owner in sports, died after a long battle with Alzheimer's. Pat Bowlen was 75 years old. Now, he took ownership of the Broncos in 1984, and during his ownership tenure, he led the Broncos to levels of unprecedented success. In his first 15 years of ownership, the Broncos appeared in 5 Super Bowls. Now, they made it 6 when they appeared in Super Bowl 48 in 2013, and their 7th and latest appearance in the Super Bowl was the one in Super Bowl 50, which they won in 2015. Now, Super Bowl 50, if you remember, that's the one where John Elway dedicated it to Pat Bowlen a full 18 years after Pat Bowlen dedicated Super Bowl 32 to John Elway. That was a really cool moment on live TV that night. Now, in his 30 years of active ownership, the Broncos suffered just 5 losing seasons. If you remember Pat Bowlen, he stepped down in 2014 so he could focus his full attention on fighting Alzheimer's. Now, since he stepped down in 2014, the Broncos, that number of losing seasons by the Broncos increased to 7. But still, that's a remarkable feat for almost 35 years of full ownership. Now, especially when you look at the other pro sports franchises in Denver. The Colorado Rockies baseball team, they've had 17 losing seasons in 26 seasons of existence. The Denver Nuggets, they've had 15 losing seasons in 29 years of existence. And the Colorado Avalanche, they've had 4 losing seasons in the last 11 years alone. Now, Pat Bowlen was not as visible or as flashy of an owner as somebody like Jerry Jones or some of the other notable NFL owners, but don't get it twisted. He was every bit just as important to the NFL and its success. Now, case in point, he served on the league's labor and finance boards. He was also chairman of the broadcast committee, and that is where he made some of his biggest impact because he changed the way people watch football. The NFL on Fox started in 1994 that millions of Americans enjoy on Sundays to this day is the brainchild of Pat Bowlen. He's known by a lot of people as the father of Sunday Night Football. Yes, the same Sunday Night Football on NBC that debuted in 2006 that has become the highest rated television show on cable in its time slot. Yes, that Sunday Night Football, that's also the brainchild of one Pat Bowlen. He was instrumental in guiding the NFL through several labor disputes between the league and the players. He also helped build the NFL brand on a global scale. In the 80s and the 90s, the Denver Broncos played 8 international games in 6 countries. And those are just some of the many contributions of his to the league, to the game of football, and ultimately, of course, to the Denver Broncos. Now, the Broncos have sold out 403 consecutive home games, including playoffs, going all the way back to 1970. That's the longest acting streak in the NFL. And to show you how much his leadership changed the Broncos and the NFL, he purchased the Broncos in 1984 for $71 million. Today, the Denver Broncos are worth $2.7 billion with a B. Now, he installed the Pat Bowlen Trust, which is a select trust of family and counsel, to basically help transition ownership of the team to one of his children. Now, when he stepped down in 2014. Now, that's only time is going to tell how all of that's going to play out. That all remains to be seen. I'm sure it's going to be expedited and kind of sped up now with his passing. Not really sure which direction that's going to take. But that is definitely something that we'll all be keeping our eyes on. Now, Pat Bowlen will be inducted posthumously to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in early August, along with legendary Broncos cornerback Champ Bailey. Now, if you ask around league circles, from players to coaches to management to fellow owners, you'll hear a lot of things about Pat Bowlen, like, he was a good leader, a good man, really cared about his employees, really cared about his players, really cared about other people. He put other people first, etc., etc. Pat Bowlen was a man who believed in putting people first. And that showed with the way he ran the Broncos on a daily basis to his charity work in the Denver community. This is a sad day for Broncos country, but heaven just added some orange and blue to its decorations. Rest in peace, Pat Bowlen. Go Broncos. All right, now we're going to switch gears to I'm in and I'm out. Kawhi Leonard, man. Kawhi Leonard is a stone-cold dynasty killer. Killer Kawhi earned his second NBA Finals MVP award last night after the Toronto Raptors beat the Golden State Warriors 114-110. If you're wondering why people are starting to call Kawhi Leonard Dynasty Killer, well, if you remember, he took down the Miami Heat dynasty a few years ago. He took down the San Antonio Spurs dynasty when he left. Well, actually, he didn't leave. They traded him, but he stood up to him after they were pulling that bull jive with his thigh and everything else, but that's a whole nother story for another time. And now he just ended the Golden State Warriors dynasty. Like, I love it. And without this just goes without even saying, like, I'm 100% in on what just happened Thursday night between the Raptors and the Warriors. Now, with the win, the Raptors become NBA champions for the first time in franchise history. Now, that game Thursday night, that was a really good game. That game Thursday was a heart racer. I mean, there was lead change after lead change. I mean, both teams came out with their fast-paced offenses, pushing the ball down the floor. I mean, it was all kinds of transition. They were dropping threes left and right. I mean, dude, this game right here was an instant classic. That game had all the makings of like a suspenseful, like drama-filled, great Hollywood movie. And for the record, I talked about my friend Shayla's theory of a champion versus a superstar a few weeks back on this podcast, and both of these squads showed championship heart, grit, and fight. Now, give credit where credit is due. I mean, Golden State, they put up a great fight Thursday, because as glad as I am that they lost, because I'm tired of them. I mean, they're the most boring story in the NBA. We already know what's going to happen. And on top of that, I'm tired of seeing Steph Curry walk up and down with these annoying camera shots of him gnawing and chewing on this mouthpiece like some kid. Like, that gets on my nerves, bruh. But yeah, aside from all that, I mean, Golden State, they really went out kicking and screaming. They really went out. If you're going to beat a champion, that's the way you have to do it. I mean, that's the way most champions are going to go out. They're not going to give it to you easy. They're going to fight their tails off, and that's exactly what Golden State did. Now, with all the injuries that Golden State had, they honestly had no business whatsoever being in this game. But they were never truly out of the game. I mean, neither team was at any point. Now, of course, we all know about the injury to Kevin Durant, and that's become a huge story in and of itself. Because now, me personally, I feel like Kevin Durant never should have played on Monday, but trust me, I understand. Most of the time with athletes, it's really hard to keep an athlete off the floor. But to be quite honest with you, that's where the onus goes on the Golden State Doc team, because they really should have just shut him down. But, that's another story for another day. Everybody and their mom is talking about that, so we're going to move on. Kevon Looney, he was injured, but he played through his collarbone injury. Klay Thompson, he came into the game playing through a sore hamstring. And then, Golden State, they just had their hearts ripped out when he went down with what was ultimately diagnosed as a torn ACL. But even with all that, I was still amazed at how hard Golden State fought in this game. Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, they were basically the driving forces behind Golden State Thursday. Now, Steph had an okay game, but Steph did not have the kind of game that most people have come to expect from Steph Curry. Klay Thompson was having a phenomenal game before he got hurt. He scored 30 points, and he was 4 of 6 from 3. And when his threes were dropping, they were dropping at critical points in the game. He wasn't just dropping them just to drop them. They were dropping to the point where it was like frustrating Toronto. And I'm like, bruh, they cannot let Klay Thompson get hot, because Klay Thompson can get hot like we've never seen before. This is the same guy that's dropped 37 points in a quarter. He once dropped 60 points through 3 quarters. When Klay Thompson gets hot, he's basically unstoppable. Draymond Green, he was a rebound machine. Now, he made some bad passes and a few dumb decisions, but he had sticky fingers up under the rim. Draymond had 19 rebounds and 13 assists on Thursday, which is basically good enough for any NBA team to win on any given night. But not when you're going up against a team like Toronto. I've talked enough about Golden State. I could talk about them a little bit more, but everybody and their mama, has talked about Golden State at length. I'm going to give some love to Toronto today. So let's talk about Jurassic Park. The NBA is funny, bro, because, LeBron James, he misses the playoffs for 1 year, and the championship trophy goes to a whole nother country. Dude, you can't make this stuff up. But anyway, enough with that. Bruh, look, what the Raptors did on Thursday is just straight up special. First, they pull off a trade that most NBA front offices would have hesitated to execute, because they send one of their franchise players, one of their franchise cornerstones in DeMar DeRozan, to San Antonio for Kawhi Leonard, who's potentially a 1-year rental, because he's an unrestricted free agent right now. So he might not even stay in Toronto. And, bruh, I know DeMar DeRozan has got to be sick, because, bruh, he's basically the sacrificial lamb in this entire deal. I know Spurs fans are sick, and I know for sure Skip Bayless, I know he's sick, because that dude is straight up salty. Every time you bring up Kawhi on that show, bruh, Skip Bayless is just, that is one salty individual. Anyway, not only did Toronto pull the trigger to bring Kawhi to the Six, they also go on to win 3 games in Oracle in the playoffs against the best team in the NBA. Then you think about the road that they took to get there. They were on the ropes against the 76ers. That series went 7 games. And then Kawhi Leonard made one of the craziest shots that we've ever seen. The shot heard around the world to end that series. Then they go up against the Greek freak, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Then they go up against him and the Milwaukee Bucks. They put their foot off in them. And then they handle their business against the best team in the NBA, a Warrior squad that simply would not go away whatsoever. Now, the Raptors played terrible in Game 5 on Monday night. They were 8 for 32 from 3 in Game 5 in the entire game. They were 9 of 16 from 3 at the beginning of the second quarter. Now, the unfortunate thing for Toronto, though, the thing I don't like about this, even though they won and they won fair and square, you're going to have those people out there that are going to try to discount the win by saying, Golden State, they had a lot of injuries. That's a fake victory. I think I seen somebody on Twitter try to say, and my whole reaction to that is bull jive. Because at the end of the day, Golden State, they still have a squad full of NBA players on their roster who get paid just like Toronto Raptors players get paid. Stop that bull jive. And Kyle doggone Lowry, Mike Lowry's little cousin. That brother had possibly the best game of his career. Now, he's one of those dudes that for whatever reason, he tends to play better on the road than he does at home. But man, Toronto needed every single bit of his effort on Thursday night. Now, he couldn't miss a shot in the first quarter. I'm like, dude, Kyle Lowry, he just came out banging them, man. He was hitting everything from every place on the floor. He was 4 for 4 in shooting, and then he scooped up 11 points in just over 2 minutes in the first quarter. And then he ultimately finished up with 26 points and 10 assists. Now, he made some questionable decisions and committed some bad fouls in the previous 5 games, but man, he more than made up for them in Game 6. And then we got my boy Fred VanVleet. Like, I like this dude, man. VanVleet is my guy. I mean, the undrafted, untouchable, and almost unplayable dude out of Wichita State. I mean, this dude really came out of nowhere. He came to the Raptors on a summer league deal in 2016 where he was basically just trying to make the team. And even in these playoffs, early in these playoffs, he was struggling. And then, his girl, she ended up having her baby. And it was like after they had that baby, man, I mean, it was like that switch just flipped in VanVleet. I mean, this dude made big shot after big shot last night. And basically throughout this series, I mean, he stuck to Steph Curry like white on rice. I mean, he made big three after big three. I mean, he killed the Warriors in the pick and roll. Now, he finished with 22 points and was 5 of 11 from 3. And not only were they big threes, but it was where they were in the game when he made them. I mean, they were the kind of threes that were just demoralizing to an opponent, that would frustrate them, because it seemed like every time Golden State started making a little bit of a run, and, they even tied it up at one point, or even when Toronto would fall behind by 2 points or 3 points, next thing you know, here comes Fred VanVleet with a big three to either tie it up or put them up by 1 or 2 points. I mean, it was just that kind of game. It was back and forth all night. I mean, it was a heart racing, man. That game was... Man, that game was what that was. And it wasn't just VanVleet and Lowry who came up big on Thursday. Pascal Siakam, Big Serge Ibaka, Marc Gasol, Norman Powell, all these cats came up big in a true testament of team effort. And that man, Kawhi, oh, my. Man, look, Kawhi Leonard has had a brilliant series. He had a brilliant playoff performance, period. He finished with 22 points and 6 rebounds. Now, with his finals MVP selection, he joins Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and LeBron James as the only players to win finals MVP for 2 different franchises. Now, whether or not you feel Kawhi is one of the GOATs or if you feel he spurned the Spurs is up to you and your opinion. But one thing is for sure. Either way, Kawhi Leonard got the last laugh. What's the wave with Chef Rodaddy? Now, the people that have run across me in person since I've been on this weight loss journey, a lot of them are always shocked with how I look and the changes that I've made and everything else. And, I get a lot of questions asked of me every time I see somebody, and I love it. I mean, I'm not complaining at all. But somebody, when I seen somebody the other day, man, they hit me with the question that really made me think. And this is actually one of my favorite questions that I've ever been asked along this journey. And basically they asked, Ro, what lessons has this weight loss journey taught you? And I like this question because it really made me think. And I've learned quite a bit of lessons on this journey, man. And the one thing about making major life changes is the fact that, you start to realize that you'll start to change here in this particular aspect of your life, but then those changes, they start kind of mushrooming, and they show you other areas of your life where you can change. They show you other areas where you can improve, and they show you other areas of life where, hey, I've been doing this wrong the whole time. This is why this happened. This is why that happened, yada, yada, yada. And it's just been amazing the amount of lessons that I've learned. So I'll go ahead and talk to you about the lessons that I've learned throughout this journey, and hopefully this reaches somebody out there and it can help you in whatever journey you're on. Hopefully it can help you kind of reach for the stars, so to speak. The first lesson that I've learned along this journey is be committed. And I can't stress that enough. Commitment is key. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about weight loss. It doesn't matter if you're talking about school, whatever the case. Commitment is key to any big life change. Now, the one thing that that really kind of made me think with this is, there were times in my life, early on in my life, when I knew God was trying to get me to do something, but I simply didn't want to do it because I knew if God was asking me to do it, then it was going to come with some serious commitment. And I, to be honest with you, I just didn't want to deal with it. So I tried to avoid it. I tried to run from it, which back then was probably about the only running I was doing. And man, when God has it on your heart to do something, when he's asking you to commit to something, then you can run from it all you want. All you're doing is delaying the inevitable. Because when it comes to God and his will, you're either going to do it voluntarily or you're going to do it forcefully. I mean, that's just, because he will let things get so bad and he'll let things hurt you so much to the point that it's like, okay, what are you trying to get me to see out of this? So with me, that's really the first thing that I learned out of it. And then when it comes to commitment, when you talk about commitment, it's not even just in the instance of losing weight. I mean, since I've been on this battle, it's taught me commitment in other areas of my life, commitment to my job, to how I do my job, to professional stuff. I'm single now, but it's given me a sense of what commitment is like. So when I do get into a relationship, it's like, okay, well, I was committed to this. I can kind of take the lesson that I learned as far as commitment goes with this and kind of put it towards that, because with losing weight, it's not easy. It is one of the hardest things I've ever done. You will have times where you feel like giving up. You will have times where you feel like cheating on your diet. You will have times where you just like, man, you know what? This is not working. I just need to throw in the towel and just give up and just say, you know what? It is what it is. Well, I mean, relationships are like that at times. You have to stay committed. You have to stay committed even when you're tempted to do something you shouldn't do. You have to stay committed when this person is getting on your last nerve. And commitment was never really a problem for me as far as like work or school or anything like that. I played athletics in school. So commitment in those instances was never a big deal. It was just when it was something that I didn't want to give up the junk food. I didn't want to give up my bad habits. And now that I've given up all that, it's like, okay, this is what I've been missing. So one thing with commitment, you have to stick to your goal, even on days when you feel like giving up, point blank, period. Now, on those days when you feel like giving up, don't give up. Just switch up your methods every once in a while. Switch up your workouts. Maybe switch up your diet a little bit. When it comes to your goals, you can kind of switch up with how you get there to the destination. Just don't switch up the destination. Lesson number 2, find your why. And I talked about this a little while ago on the podcast, but find out your why as to why you want to lose the weight or whatever big life change you're trying to make. Why do you want to make this change? Because when you find out your why, you find out the purpose in it. Now for me, I wanted to go along this journey because I wanted to become healthier. I wanted to feel better. I wanted to look better. And honestly, this is going to sound funny, but I knew I've always wanted to get married. So I knew that I wanted to get sexy for my future wife because, I mean, let's just keep it real. We grown here, so I could look good naked. I mean, I'm just keep it real. We all grown here. Part of a marriage is sex. And I knew I wanted to have a good sex life. I mean, let's just be honest. So I knew that with all of that, I knew I was going to have to get healthier. I was going to have to lose the weight. I was going to have to eat better. And on top of that, I didn't want to deal with the illnesses and the diseases and everything else, or increasing my chances to get these illnesses, to get these diseases like the diabetes and things like that. I didn't want to increase my chances at getting any of that because I was too lazy to make the changes that I knew I needed to make. Lesson number 3, value your body. God only gives us this one life and this one body, and it's up to us to value it. And once this life is over, I mean, that's a wrap. Now, you can get into the whole discussion of eternal life and heaven or hell, either one, but we ain't talking about that. We talking about just the physical aspect of it. We only get this one body and this one life. Value it. God did not design the human body to walk around with all this extra weight. He did not design the human body to ingest so much junk food. He did not design the human body to treat it how a lot of us treat it. And that was one thing that I came to realize. And this is, I started realizing, man, this is why my joints and stuff are hurting, because my body was not designed to carry around all this extra weight. And I'm carrying around all this extra weight because I'm not exercising like I should, because I'm not eating the right things. So once I realized it and put it in that context, I was like, well, let me get up and do something, bro. Let me do something about this. Now, the Bible says the body is a temple, and it is, and we should treat it as such. So, that was another reason why I got it together, because it's like, man, I only get this one life, and I really don't want it to get cut short because of my bad decisions. Lesson number 4. Be patient. And this was a big one for me because, man, I am not a very patient person by my very nature. And this is one way, I guess, that God has taught me to be patient, because weight loss in and of itself is not, it is a long and arduous process. You must be patient on this journey. Actually, any big life change that you're trying to make, whatever journey you're on, you have to be patient because it does take time. You have to remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Do not settle for quick fixes. I see all the time on Instagram, these flat tummy teas and these detox and all that stuff. Don't settle for these quick fixes and these shortcuts, because remember, if you go for the shortcut, you will come up short. You are not going to escape hard work. You're not going to escape changing things with your lifestyle if you want serious change. Now, during those times when it feels like nothing is happening, don't give up. Now, you can reevaluate and change some things around and see if you can switch it up. I mean, you can change your diet, change your workouts, things like that. But whatever you do, don't give up. And when it comes to, and reevaluate your diet, maybe you're taking in, just a little bit too many calories. Maybe you're eating, too much sugar. Maybe you're eating too much fruit. That could be possible. It could be something as simple as not drinking enough water. I know a lot of people like to eat tree nuts like cashews, pecans, pistachios. Nuts are high in calories. They're calorie dense. So maybe you need to take a look at something like that. There's always some little tweak or something like that you want to look at. But whatever you do, don't give up. Just be patient and keep pushing. Lesson number 5. I learned to embrace the pain. Now, this will be a painful journey. If you're on the same journey I am and trying to lose weight, this is going to be a painful journey, point blank, period. You will have physical pain at times just from working out and from all the different exercises and things that you will have to do. But pain is progress. And it's not just physical pain. You can endure emotional pain. You can endure mental pain. I mean, there's different types of pain. I mean, it's not only physical pain that you will endure. Now, I've said this before and I'll say it again. You have to choose either the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. But either way, you're not going to get out of pain when it comes to making some kind of change. When it comes to making life changes, whether you're talking about weight loss or a bad relationship, whatever the case is, when it comes to making positive change in your life, you have to decide which pain you want to deal with. Do you want to deal with the pain of discipline, the discipline that it's going to take to lose the weight, the discipline that it's going to take to break off this bad relationship and to keep it off, to block this person out of your life? Or do you want to keep going down the same road and then suffer the pain of regret later on, where if it's weight loss, you need to do whatever you need to do to lose weight, but you catch diabetes or something later on, or you catch some other illness or some other sickness, some other weight-related sickness, or, you've kept this bad person in your life and rejected some other really good people in your life, and now you got all kinds of hell breaking loose in your life as a result of having this bad influence, this bad person in your life and keeping them in your life. That's the pain of regret. You have to decide which one you want to deal with. You won't get out of it pain-free either way. So you may as well choose the pain that's going to help you the most. Lesson number 6. Get your priorities in order. You have to ask yourself, is this important enough for me to make time to do it? Because we're all busy. We all have a million different things going on. Is this change that you want important enough for you to make time to do it? If you're trying to lose weight, is it important enough for you to make time to go to the gym? Is it important enough for you to make time to cook your meals ahead of time so that way you're not rushing through the week? Is it important enough for you so whenever you go out with your homies or whenever you go out with your friends, it's like, hey, man, I can't drink that. I can't eat that. Is it important enough for you before y'all go out to whichever restaurant you're going to go to? Are you going to look up the menu to see, hey, I can eat that, I can do this, I can do that, but I can't eat that? Is it important enough for you to make those kinds of sacrifices in order to hit your goal or whatever kind of goal it is that you're trying to hit? Is it important enough for you to make the necessary sacrifices and as a result, prioritize your life or reprioritize your life? Is it important enough for you to do that? Like they used to ask us in football. How bad do you want it? You have to ask yourself that question. How bad do I want this? Do I want this bad enough to make the necessary changes? Do I want this bad enough to sacrifice whatever it is I need to sacrifice to get this goal? If you can answer yes and you can follow through with it, then you know you really, really want it. Lesson number 7. This is the one that I probably fell in love with the most. Actually between 7 and 8. You will discover things about yourself that you otherwise would not have known. And this is the one that probably taught me the most lessons out of all of these, because I did not realize how much I didn't like how I looked or how I felt until I started doing something about it. Another thing that I didn't realize how much I didn't realize that I would actually understand and actually agree with some of the women that rejected me in the past. And that one right there can be kind of touchy for men, because sometimes with men, when a woman rejects you, it can kind of hit that ego. It can hit that pride. And the first thing that a lot of men will do is like, ah, man, she bull jiving, this, that, and the other. We won't actually look at the reason as to why this woman possibly just rejected us. We just take it and say, oh, man, it's her loss, this, and that, and the other. But I don't know, as I was going through this, as I've been going on this journey and, losing the weight and finding all these different other parts about myself, man, it was like, okay, you know what? I can understand why such and such rejected me. Because you know what? If I were in their shoes, I wouldn't date me either if I look like this. So you know what? Yeah, I can kind of understand that. And, on top of that, man, there were other things that I started realizing, man. I didn't realize even back then. Well, I guess you could even tie it into being rejected, because had these women not rejected me and I would have got with them, I would have destroyed it anyway, because I didn't realize how unreasonable I was back then. I didn't realize how impatient I was back then. I didn't realize, how I used to, let's say like me and you, or let's say like I would get into a disagreement with somebody. Well, back then I didn't listen to understand where they were coming from. I listened to reply. So I didn't realize how bad I had that. And man, it's just amazing just going through this journey. It opens up it opens your eyes up to so many more avenues and aspects of life and mistakes and things that you never really thought that you made. So, and then once I started, going on this journey and, working out and changing up what I ate, I mean, my outlook on life got better. I was more positive. I mean, when I would see people in the street, even when I was bigger, everybody always thought I was positive. Everybody always thought I was a positive person because I like to laugh and I like to make people laugh. But I didn't realize how negative of a look I had on life back then. My memory has improved. I mean, it's just crazy the amount of changes and things that I've noticed just on this short journey that I've been on. And, that was another aspect that I learned. There are so many life lessons that can be learned across multiple aspects of our lives if we commit and take time to truly change something about ourselves. Because one thing you have to realize, this whole thing is intertwined. And anytime you make a decision, whether it affects you immediately or, a little while later, or sometime down the road, anytime you make a decision, it affects other aspects of your lives, whether you know it or not. And that's one thing that I've truly come to notice. So I'm even more careful about the decisions that I make, the people that I hang around with, and, et cetera. So that's another thing that will open your eyes to. Lesson number 8 that I learned: you have to be honest with yourself. And this was one of the hardest things that I ever had to do, but it was one of the best things I've done. No, it is the best thing that I've done, because it opened the door for me to change a lot of stuff about my life. And when I sat down and I told God the things that I wanted out of life, I told him I wanted to get married. I wanted to have this great job. I wanted to do this. I wanted to do that. He was just like, okay, well, Ro, that's cool, and I'll work all that out, but you got to change some stuff with you. And when he did that, he brought back this conversation that we had as a class with Dr. Lee Browning, God rest her soul, my college professor at West Texas A&M. And she basically told us in so many words that, a lot of y'all are wanting to get married and have kids, and that's great. But for a big life step like marriage, you need to look at yourself across multiple aspects of life, and you need to ask yourself, based on this and this and this, would you date you and would you marry you? So when God brought that to me, I was like, okay, well, let me do that. So I started looking at myself in multiple aspects of life, based on, we'll just go straight to the gut. Based on what you look like now, Ro, based on your physical appearance, would you date you or would you marry you? And the answer was no. And it was like, based on where you're at professionally, Ro, would you date you or would you marry you? And the answer was no. Based on where you're at financially, Ro, would you date you or would you marry you? And the answer was no. So as I started going down the line and the answer kept being no, it was like, damn, I got a lot of work to do. So, it was like, then I asked God, I was like, okay, well, I see all these changes that I need to make, but where do I start? And just next thing I know, just one thing led to another. And that's really how this whole ball it snowballed. And that's how this whole thing just got going. And I will tell anybody, but before you truly make a life change, be honest with yourself. It is hard. Now it didn't make me cry, but it is hard. And, I've known people that have done it and they broke down crying. But that's the only way you're going to truly get down to the root of whatever issue it is that you're having. That's the only way you're going to get down to it, is to be honest with yourself and to just check yourself and stop masking stuff. Do not mask whatever it is. Don't run from it. Just embrace that pain and do what you need to do to handle it. Lesson number 9 that I've learned: embrace and be thankful for the process. The process is hard, but I thank God every day for all the hard lessons that I've learned along this journey, because it's truly made me a better man. Now I'm still learning, I'm still improving, and and as a result, I'm still evolving. That's going to happen until the day I die. But as of right now, like, I love where I'm at. I love the lessons that I've learned, no matter how hard they've been. And I thank God for taking me on this journey. I really do. Because had he not taken me on this journey, had I not bumped my head, had I not had the hard lessons, I wouldn't know the things that I know, and I wouldn't be the person that I am. So I'm thankful. Lesson number 10, this is the last one. Thank God for each and every day on this earth, because life is truly a blessing. Life is so fragile, and it can be over in a split second. Each and every last one of us know of someone or some instance where we thought we were going to see somebody the next day at work, where we thought we were going to see somebody, maybe it was an associate or somebody that you kick it with at home or whatever. We've all had those instances, or know people that have had those instances where you thought you were going to see this person, and then next thing you know, you get a phone call that this person's been killed in a car wreck, or they've had a heart attack, or they may even, drop dead, cut in the yard or something around the house. Just, any kind of case of untimely death. We've all seen that. And as a result, it really makes you remember that, enjoy your life. Yes, life can get hard at times. Yes, life brings its headaches. It brings its heartbreaks. It brings its aches. It brings its pains. But life is beautiful. And when you think about it, those heartaches, those heartbreaks, those aches, those pains, those rough times in life, when you make it on the other side of that, those are what make life so beautiful, because the lessons that you learn, the persistence that it takes, that's what makes life so beautiful. So yeah, life can be hard at times. And at the end of the day, when life gets hard, you do what you have to do to handle it. And, that means cry and then handle it, whatever it is, you do what you have to do to handle it. But enjoy your life, because life is beautiful. And at the end of the day, life is over before you know it. Enjoy it while you have it. And when it comes down to making these changes with life, do whatever you need to do to make the change. Make whatever changes you have to make to enjoy a happier and healthier life. Do whatever you have to do, but enjoy your life. Enjoy the journey, because it's over before we all know it. And for the last segment of episode 56 of the Undrafted podcast, this is some bull jive. Now, we all know the NFL is all about the money, and I get that. I have no issue with that whatsoever. But it wants to make even more of it by expanding an 18-game regular season schedule. Yes, this issue has been brought up once again, and it just doesn't seem to go away. And the big reason for all of that is the NFL, I don't know, sometimes the NFL just does like the rest of us, we're all human. It seems to miss out on the concept that too much of anything is a bad thing. And the reason why I say this, the NFL, it's already at all-time popularity. I mean, it is a great product as it is. It's already a game that fans can't seem to get enough of. And a big reason for that is because of the volatility and the importance of every single game in a 16-game schedule. With fewer games, it creates suspense and demand because fans can't seem to get enough of the games. Each game counts, so fans tune in faithfully to see if their squad is going to take a W or if they're going to take an L, and what the consequences of either one are for their team's playoff hopes. Now, in essence, 16 games makes it feel like every single game counts. So with the collective bargaining agreement expiring in 2020, or after the 2020 season, I should say, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, he's once again touting the idea of an 18-game regular season schedule. Now, in a lot of ways, this is hypocrisy on the NFL's part, because you're asking these players to put their bodies through even more hell than what they already do, while at the same time, you're preaching player safety. Now, if you ask any NFL player, and a lot of them have come out on the record and said this, if you ask any NFL player, it takes everything in them now to make it through 16 games. And this is not even including the playoffs. Now, the NFL only sees increasing regular season games, increasing dollar signs. But they're overlooking the one thing it will decrease: quality of the games. Less is more. Quality over quantity. The NFL wants to reduce the preseason by 2 games and sub those for 2 regular season games. Well, now you're running into coaching issues because the offseason, it's already been sized down quite a bit. They can't practice as long as they used to. They can't hit in practice like they used to. And now you're asking coaches and scouts to evaluate guys on a reduced timeline. Well, if you do that, you run into issues with talent and everything else, because now you might start diluting the talent pool. But that's another story for another time. And if you mess with the talent pool by diluting it like that, you're messing up the product. And then when you mess up the product, you're messing up the bottom line. But that's another story for another day. Not to mention the fact that the NFL Players Association, they're going to want expanded rosters. They're going to ask for expanded game day rosters. Now, as of right now, the game day roster, teams can only dress 46 players on game day, despite the fact they've got a legal roster limit of 53 players. Now, with an 18-game schedule, you're going to have to increase that game day roster to 56 or even 60 guys at the very least, I would think. Now, another thing that the NFLPA is going to ask for, they're going to ask for an extra bye week, and they're definitely going to ask for more money. Now, with these guys wanting a bigger piece of the pie on top of expanded rosters, I'm not so sure NFL owners want to cover those extra costs. I mean, teams who make the playoffs, they already play 18 to 20 games in a season anyway. Personally, I don't want an 18-game regular season schedule. 16 games is perfect the way it is. If the NFL wants more revenue, they can expand the playoff tournament by 2 to 4 teams in each conference. I mean, that would make more sense because you're not prolonging the season. You're just letting more teams into the playoff. If you want to increase the revenue like that, I'm all for it. Now, I'm all cool with change and evolution and things like that of products and services because you do have to change to stay with the times. But this is some change that I'm just not on board with. And really, it doesn't seem like anybody's really asking for this outside of NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell. Bruh, an 18-game regular season schedule? Nah, bruh, I can't get with that. That's some bull jive. Well, that's my time for this episode of the Undrafted Podcast. I want to take my time to thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for blessing me with the gifts, the talents, and the resources to do this podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to tune in. Remember, you can follow the Undrafted Podcast on Instagram at the Undrafted Podcast or on Twitter at Row for Show TV. You can also catch the Undrafted Podcast on Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Podcast, iTunes, and now iHeartRadio. And like I said, this is the last episode of the Undrafted Podcast for about the next 5 or 6 weeks until NFL training camp starts up. So I am going to miss you all. And to all my loyal listeners, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Be back, and we're just taking a short break. We'll be back in 5 or 6 weeks, like I say. And in the meantime, I'm going to leave you with the Bible verse. 2 Samuel chapter 22, verses 3 and 4. The God of my rock, in him will I trust. He is my shield and the horn of my salvation, my high tower and my refuge. My Savior, thou savest me from violence. I will call on the Lord, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from mine enemies. Remember, do your best and let God handle the rest. Be blessed.